Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Petovich here for SkiSoutheast.com. It's another season, it's upon us. A lot of resorts already open. We've had a great middle of November with cold temperatures. A lot of resorts have been making snow even if they're not open yet. But I thought I'd give our first seasonal snowfall forecast here for the Thanksgiving holiday, which is coming up later this week, but also a little preview and what I think is going to happen this upcoming winter. So if you haven't heard, we're going to have the third consecutive La Nina pattern in the Pacific. Now, La Nina typically means that cooler than average water temperatures in the equatorial Pacific. That typically is not a great setup for snow lovers in the Southeast, but I would caution you. Now, on average, it's warmer and drier than average across most of the Southeast. That's, if you take all the La Nina years, you're going to see this be pretty uniformly probably dry. But you see the storm track coming through the Ohio Valley. This is what happened last year. We had the storm track get close enough that we ended up with a couple of good storms, which ended up pushing our averages a little bit higher than you would normally see in a La Nina winter. So I do think that's going to happen again this winter. So if you want some good news, I do think this storm track right here, if it shifts briefly for a week or two throughout the season, every month, if we get it for like a week, that could really set the stage. So it could be more about timely snowfall than persistent snowfall and cold. So I don't want to be doom and gloom on it because we've seen La Nina winters where, yeah, it's warm for a week and then we get timely snow and cold. It's warm for a week, timely cold and snow. By the end of the year, yeah, if you average out the season, it would be warmer and drier than average, but the timely snow could help you really fluff up, let's say, some of those snowfall totals. So what about this week? What are we looking at here? Long range forecast here, not looking real great. Things are actually warming up a little bit compared to what we just saw. So these next couple of systems, one coming in on Friday, primarily looks like rain. Well, East Coast storm tries to crank up. Now, I am somewhat optimistic here on Sunday morning, even though the guidance isn't showing this, that we might see a brief spell of northwest flow snow, especially in West Virginia, but I even think down into North Carolina. So stay tuned and pay attention to that because there might be just enough cold air with that system that the backside gives us a little burst of snow. And then going into next week, there's signs of a much bigger front. This is the middle of next week. So heading towards that first weekend in December, this definitely looks like a much colder pattern setup here. You can actually see cold coming across the Great Lakes. So this could be a significant northwest flow event, especially for Virginia, West Virginia, and Maryland, and parts of Virginia. I don't know if it'll make it all the way across the Blue Ridge in this setup, but those typical favored locations from Wist to Timberline down to Snowshoe and Winter Place might end up seeing some decent snow out of that setup, but that's still pretty far out there. And I'll show you when I look at the snowfall forecast from the European model only. I like to show this kind of out a little bit further just because it tends to do a better job. And I'll show you that there is, just a little bit of snow showing up late next week with that system as you go up into parts of West Virginia. If I head up there real quick, you can see, yeah, a little bit of snow there. Has a couple little bullseyes of around 2 to 4, maybe 2 to 3 inches. Not much to the south. Now, I've actually plotted all the ski resorts and tubing locations in the Southeast, at least based on my KML file. That's kind of where they are. So that'll give you a rough estimate on where those places are: North Carolina, Tennessee, up into Virginia, West Virginia, and Maryland. So you can see some of the resorts up in West Virginia might end up doing pretty decent. So I wish I had a better forecast for this week just because it is kind of the kickoff of the season. I know a lot of resorts will be opening. Doesn't mean that there's not already snow there because most have been making snow for the past week and a half. So they're going to open either way. And some of these nights, I think even tonight and tomorrow night, kind of marginal for maybe some nighttime snowmaking, especially up in West Virginia and Maryland. But I'm going to keep an eye on that Sunday system. I'll tell you that honestly, I'm not super confident in this setup here, but I'm going to put some snowflakes there just because that's something I'm going to watch. It's pretty far out there, but it's certainly a pattern to watch going into the weekend. So let's get this thing started. If you haven't hit the slopes yet, it's time to get out there. It's always nice when we could start pre-Thanksgiving, and even talking about snow and skiing on Thanksgiving week is amazing. That means we're off to a pretty good start this season. Hope we have a great season. Keep your fingers crossed, and as I always say, think snow.